take my garbage truck.
Like, I don't know if you guys know this, but there's literally a floating island of garbage in the middle of the ocean right now. Yeah, I think it's called Puerto Rico.
I'm going to do it whether the women like it or not. I'm going to protect them.
Trump said ban all Muslims. Trump said criminals, rapists, etc. He said every hateful thing. And then every excuse I get from all the conservatives I debate is, well, you shouldn't believe him. He's a clown. He exaggerates. He does hyperbole. You shouldn't believe a word he says. Then why are you voting for him if you don't believe a word he says?
It is absolutely wild times. It really, really is. And, you know, there's a lot going on. Like, I don't know if you guys know this, but there's literally a floating island of garbage in the middle of the ocean right now. Yeah, I think it's called Puerto Rico. Okay, all right, okay, we're getting there. Now, again, normally I don't follow the national anthem, everybody.
The Trump campaign is attempting to distance itself from the comedian you just heard from, Tony Hinchcliffe, who is also known as Kill Tony, for his offensive and racist jokes during a rally in Madison Square Garden over the weekend. Now, as you just heard, he called Puerto Rico a floating pile of garbage, but as you also just heard, that audience of Trump supporters who go to this Trump rally clearly did not find it funny. And I choose to focus on that. That gives me a little bit of hope in this country and in the electorate. They clearly didn't enjoy it, but we do have more where that came from.
Yeah, and I focus on both. So look, it's super important to note that the audience groaned, and they groaned so much that he made note of it over and over again. They did not enjoy the set. So do not say that everybody who went to that rally agrees with this guy and thinks along the same ways. And I get it, he's a comic. Terrible so-called comedy. That was not a joke. That was just, isn't it funny to make fun of Puerto Ricans? Or just to insult Puerto Ricans. Where's the punchline? Is the punchline that they're dirty? Is that because garbage? Where's the punchline? So don't give me this garbage about, at one point there was some garbage bill in Puerto Rico, as if he knew that and he's following Puerto Rican politics and he was making a super obscure joke about that. No, it was a very blunt instrument joke, it was dumb. But guys, whether you think it's fair or not fair, the stench of that joke and the other things that were said in that rally are gonna stick to the Republicans. Just like I told you, the McDonald's stunt that he did was a really good PR move, even though there was no substance behind it. He's against higher wages for McDonald's workers, he's against regulations that protect those workers, etc. But it was a good PR stunt and worked really well for him. This is the exact opposite. The audience might have grown, it might be a comic, but it's gonna be terrible for the Trump campaign.
Which is why the Trump campaign is doing everything it can to distance themselves from what happened in Madison Square Garden. In fact, even Peter Navarro is coming out with some pretty harsh language against the comedian. Hinchcliffe is irritated by the backlash he's getting. He thinks that people are humorless. In fact, he was pretty irritated with the audience at this rally. So let's take a look at more.
Believe it or not, people, I welcome migrants to the United States of America with open arms. And by open arms, I mean like this. It's wild. And these Latinos, they love making babies too, just know that. They do. They do. There's no pulling out. They don't do that. They come inside, just like they did to our country. It's a cool black guy with a thing on his head. What the hell is that, a lampshade? Look at this guy. Oh my goodness. Wow. I'm just kidding, that's one of my buddies. He had a Halloween party last night. We had fun, we carved watermelons together. It was awesome. You guys this is a groany little morning crowd, huh? It's tough to follow this audition for the next Commissioner Gordon's over here.
So it's really interesting because, the Trump campaign alleges that his set wasn't vetted ahead of time. That's probably true, but I mean, someone loaded, if those jokes were on a teleprompter, someone loaded on a teleprompter, unclear if they did. But the other thing that I'll just mention is, it's interesting because there are two different campaigns here in this election, obviously. And they have two different approaches that I think are bad when it comes to vetting speeches and performers. So on the Republican end, you have the Trump campaign not doing its due diligence and not ensuring that the comedian has a set that's going to anger even Trump supporters. But then on the Democratic side, you'll have a literal Democratic surrogate who wants to give a quick 5 to 10 minute speech at the convention and will allow the party to vet the speech, but she's Palestinian. So Palestinian surrogate, we can't allow her to speak because we can't risk it.
Yeah, so look, I get some of those jokes, right? And in a different context, someone would be fine. The garbage joke was not a joke. The punchline there was, don't we all hate Puerto Ricans? Again, the crowd groaned there, and they groaned, I thought, at exactly the right parts at the watermelon line, right? But they actually didn't groan on the immigration line, and I get it, right? It's a little bit, so that one, if you're a Democrat and you get super offended, I got it. And is this the right context for those kind of jokes? No, right? But the other, the ones that barely jokes that just go, hey, don't we all hate these sets of people? I can't stand those. And I think they're super counterproductive and terrible. But Anna's 100% right. Democrats are too safe and Republicans are too unsafe.
And it hurts both campaigns.
Exactly right. So look, I'll tell you a funny one that's not even, that's like somewhere in the middle. But so I was opening for Bernie one time and I started attacking Hillary Clinton too much back in 2016. And when I started going off on Hillary too much, Bernie started coming out to make sure that they got me off, okay? So he came from the stage and they started roaring. I was like, oh, I got you, okay? So even Bernie plays it a little safe, actually a decent amount safe. Kamala Harris is on the, okay, we're vetting everything, every word, everything has to be a talking point. Remember, the speeches all have to be super boring and uninteresting. And then we bring out a super big celebrity and everybody goes, oh my God, it's Beyonce or Taylor Swift. And everybody go back to the plan, etc. And the Trump rally is like, don't we hate Puerto Ricans and black people, right? And it's like, Jesus, man, these are the options we have. But to me, the Rudy stuff about Palestinians was worse than any joke from a comic.
We're gonna get to that in a minute, but I gotta make another point because, listen, if you're a Democratic voter and you are drinking the Democratic Party's Kool-Aid on how offended you should be about this comedian, I hear you. I found his jokes pretty gross and offensive. And I'm actually happy that the Trump campaign is distancing themselves because usually they don't do that.
Yeah, that's rare.
Yeah.
That's a good point.
So for instance, Danielle Alvarez, a senior campaign advisor, told the Washington Post point blank, this joke does not reflect the views of President Trump or the campaign. As I mentioned earlier, Peter Navarro is trashing the comedian and everything. But look, put that aside. I wanna just quickly talk about the difference between rhetoric, which may be gross, which might direct hatred toward a group of people, and actions which honestly lead to more devastation for Puerto Ricans in Puerto Rico than anything else. We still have this antiquated 1920s law called the Jones Act, which basically forces Puerto Rico to only accept imports, because remember, Puerto Rico is considered part of the United States, and the Jones Act states that any products that are going from one American port to another needs to be shipped by a US ship, a US owned and made ship with a US crew. And look, this law came about after World War I, and it had a lot to do with national security, right? Because you want to make sure if things are going from one American port to another, it's secure and you don't want a ship that was built by a potential adversary, that kind of thing. But what it's led to with Puerto Rico is inflated costs for energy. It actually complicated the hurricane relief efforts. Now, the Biden administration did a quick one-time waiver for Puerto Rico in order to help them recover from Hurricane Maria. But let's keep it real. Let's actually have a conversation about how both parties, Democrats and Republicans, refuse to reform that law, which is totally battering Puerto Rico as we speak.
So Anna, that's super substantive and correct, but in the context of an election that's about a week away, Republicans, if you don't get that when you call Puerto Rico garbage, that you're gonna turn off all Puerto Rican voters.
No, but they do get it. That's why they're distancing themselves from the comedian.
No. the politicians get it, and we're about to show you their reactions, right? But for a lot of MAGA guys online, they're like super mad about people getting upset. They're like, it's just a comic, so it's no big deal. No, it's no big deal to you. But if you're Puerto Rican and they call your island a piece of trash, you're not gonna be happy about it. And the fact that you can't, like, if you can't understand that and how damaging that is, you're just not understanding politics because you think everybody thinks like you, but they don't.
But more importantly, I mean, think about how you would feel if, some candidate running in another country, and I get that Puerto Rico is part of the United States, but imagine someone trashing our country like that, and how I would be furious about it.
Oh, I mean, it's even easier than that. If you're from Alabama and I make fun of how stupid hillbillies from Alabama are, you're gonna lose your mind.
That's true,
right?
exactly, and you should, that's super offensive.
Right, so but that's why I say, always think about the shoe on the other foot. But the guy makes a similar joke about Puerto Ricans, and all the MAGA guys are like, what's the big deal? Tell me, I guarantee you, and I do a hillbilly joke, you guys will all get super hurt. And be like, oh, that's it, I'm not watching any liberal show anymore. They made fun of hillbillies and rednecks. Come on, keep it real. Anyways, this is super damaging. That's why the Republicans are out going, no. So let's get to that.
So Steve Doocy pointed out how damaging this might be during a discussion on Fox and Friends. Let's take a look.
Of all the comments, however, of the warm-up acts, there was a comic who made some offensive comments about Latinos and Puerto Ricans and African Americans and others, and he's already been denounced by Republicans and by the campaign. But unfortunately for the Trump campaign, the Harris campaign has denounced it and mobilized influential Puerto Rican influencers like Bad Bunny, who's very big in the Puerto Rican community and the Latino community. He put out something on Instagram, and so did Ricky Martin with millions of followers. And he wrote, or he said, this is what they think of us, vote for Kamala Harris.
And you also have Republicans like Rick Scott speaking out against it. This joke bombed for a reason. It's not funny and it's not true. Puerto Ricans are amazing people and amazing Americans. I've been to the island many times. It's a beautiful place. Everyone should visit. I will always do whatever I can to help any Puerto Rican in Florida. Well, I'm sure you will. I mean, he's in Florida, and so there's a huge Puerto Rican population there. Everyone should visit. I will always do whatever I can to help Puerto Ricans in Florida or on the island. And so, you have a lot of pushback from Republican lawmakers and public figures, and I'm glad they're doing that. That is a departure from what we've seen in the past. Yeah. And look, for the Trump supporters on social media who are trying to provide cover for the comedian, my sense is they're terrified that this is actually going to hurt him electorally. And so they're trying to justify it in some way. I don't think you need to do that. I think condemning it is actually a much better look than just accepting it or pretending like it was okay.
Yeah, so by the way, Bad Bunny was gonna endorse Kamala Harris anyway. We knew that. We've been working on a Bad Bunny reference shirt on shoptyt.com for a couple of weeks, so it's not like people didn't know that. But it does animate people. I mean, I talked to Ida Rodriguez, who's a co-host of ours from time to time, a great comic, and she was livid about it. She's originally from Puerto Rico too, and it's not hard to figure out why, for exactly the reasons that we talked about. And look, the Trump campaign is lazy because you're a week out from the election. This is a massive rally at Madison Square Garden that the entire press is going to pay attention to, and you didn't bother vetting the comic.
I know.
That is so symbolic of Trump's laziness. When he was in office, a lot of people are looking at it from rose-colored glasses. I remember at the time it was a nightmare because he never prepared anything. He didn't know. He's like, oh, no one knew healthcare was this complicated. Yeah, brother, because you never did any of your homework. And so, to the point, Anna, when I saw this guy, my first reaction was, I'm worried about his safety. The comics, okay? And I'll tell you why. Because this is doing a lot of damage. Huh?
Because he's in New York?
No, this is doing a lot of damage. And Trump, look, the polling is so split. I never say this. I have no idea who's gonna win. And so if Trump loses and people on the right thinks that it's because of this guy, then I worry about him getting attacked by the right. Like, what did you do? You cost us the election. I said, don't do that. Don't do that. He's just a comic, okay? But this was not a good moment for the Republican campaign or for Trump. And just as I told you, the one thing that could cost them Because as unsure as I am, my intuition is saying that Trump is leading, but he juggles live hand grenades, and this hand grenade just blew up on him.
AOC, of course, was also very offended. She's Puerto Rican herself. As a legislator, I would insist that AOC look into reforming the Jones Act. That's causing a lot of damage to Puerto Ricans as we speak.
No, I'm sure she knows that, though, to be fair to her.
It would behoove him to hire a few great comics to just tour with him and just write one-liners about all these different people.
I mean,
if he could remember them, I mean, I know he likes to go off his own head, but if he could remember a few Hinchcliffe bangers, if he hires Hinchcliffe to take him on the road, do you know how insane that would be?
Yeah, dude.
Hinchcliffe writing bangers for Trump people. Trump was smart. He would hire Shane and Tony Hinchcliffe.
Woody. Now, back in August, Joe Rogan, of all people, had suggested and recommended that the Trump campaign hire comedian Tony Hinchcliffe in order to put out some bangers about Trump's political opponents. Fast forward to several months later, he's a headliner over at the Trump rally at Madison Square Garden. And of course, that led to a lot of controversy because of what he said about Puerto Ricans and other groups as part of his set. So I want to just note that while it's unlikely that Trump was listening to that and took Joe Rogan's advice, it's also true, and it's also been reported, that Trump has been getting advice from his son Barron in regard to his podcasting strategy. So his son very likely is listening to Rogan, and maybe his son gave that recommendation to his father. Now, I also want to talk a little bit about whether the jokes were vetted ahead of time. There was a lack of clarity on that, but now we do have a little bit of clarity. So before we get to that, Cenk, any thoughts?
Yeah, so this guy's famous for being a roast comic. You know, roast comics are interesting, and I'm not gonna sit here and evaluate whether they do the roast right or not. But is this the time for a roast comic a week before the election? You knuckleheads, you idiots. Thank God you're so stupid. Like, so the Trump team is gonna bring this guy on, know that he is going to say the most offensive things, but that's literally his routine.
That is his routine.
Yeah, so this is exactly the problem with the Democratic and Republican Party. Democratic Party will take no chances. They'll run the most insipid campaign you have ever seen, barely reaching any undecided voters.
Snooze fest.
Yeah, total snooze fest, barely doing any interviews, can barely do anything outside of talking points. And the Republicans on the other end of the spectrum are madmen, and they're insulting everyone. A week, the Puerto Ricans are garbage. The black people eat watermelons. The Muslims are terrorists at 2 years old. We hate you all. Are you guys nuts? What are you doing? So him being a comic is not the issue. His jokes are, in that context, is not the issue. Bringing them into this context was Trump's team's decision.
Yeah.
And they did that because they think it's funny to make fun of other people. Well, they might find out soon that it's not so funny.
So Trump is now, like, he's released a statement. He is totally distancing himself from Tony Hinchcliffe. So, there is an admission of, hey, this was a bad decision. But I also want to just note, I totally didn't recognize Tony Hinchcliffe because I watched the Tom Brady roast, and he was one of the comedians who participated in that. And he was pretty funny. But in that context, it was a roast of Tom Brady. In that context, it made a lot of sense. You knew what you were expecting. As someone who's one of the big acts as a Trump rally at Madison Square Garden, obviously you run the risk of offending people, and that's exactly what happened. Okay, so.
I'm just sorry, Ann. I'm gonna jump in one thing. So I didn't see that roast, and I don't know this brother, and Jon Stewart speaks well of him, so that carries a lot of weight with me. But having said that, I didn't see any jokes about white people. Like, he just joke after joke, and I've now watched a couple of his sets. I don't know all of his sets, and you guys will send me material. He once did it in 1987. But like, he can find funny things about hating Muslims, Jews, black people, Puerto Ricans, Asians, etc. White people. At a MAGA rally, wait, who are you roasting at a MAGA rally? Why didn't you roast MAGA? You didn't want to do that, right? Okay, Mr. Brave Comic. So let's just be clear about who this guy is. Anyway, keep going on.
So the Bulwark has some new reporting about whether the Trump campaign vetted his set ahead of time. And there is some indication that that did happen. So according to the Bulwark, he had a joke calling Vice President Kamala Harris a C word, a campaign insider involved in the discussions about the event told The Bulwark, let's say it was a red flag. So they had that red flag. They apparently took that part of his act out. And then what's somewhat surprising is that joke was actually seen as a red flag, and they didn't really see any of the other jokes as a red flag at all. The America's Super PAC, financed by billionaire Elon Musk, recently also released a web ad that repeatedly calls Kamala Harris the C word. Only later does it say that she's a communist. And during a podcast appearance just hours before the Madison Square Garden rally, vice presidential candidate JD Vance repeatedly mocked Harris's laugh, calling it very fraudulent and so off-putting. I should note that the America Super PAC took that ad down. I think they realized, oh, maybe this isn't a good way of handling the situation, or putting a political ad out that kind of implies that Kamala Harris is being called the other C word, not communist. But I just wanted to make a quick note about that. Regardless, though, it does seem like Hinchcliffe's jokes were looked at ahead of time. And some people in the campaign apparently felt that it wasn't that big of a deal. Campaign staffers had asked all speakers to submit drafts of their speeches ahead of time before they were loaded into the teleprompter, according to the aforementioned sources. Once the objectionable C word joke was spotted, the sources said a staffer asked Hinchcliffe to strike it. He complied. But here's an interesting component to all of this. Allegedly, those sources also insisted that they did not spot the other objectionable lines in Hinchcliffe's speech prior to him delivering it, because they were ad-libbed. So they claimed that not all of the jokes were in his script.
Yeah, so first of all, there's a teleprompter, and either it was in the teleprompter or it wasn't. So somebody knows the real answer. Now, let me make an educated guess as to what happened here. If their theory is, they say, well, no, we told this guy, take those jokes out, but he ad-libbed them. Well, then why did he agree to take the C word joke out? Because you told him to take that out and he did. So did he ad-lib or didn't he ad-lib? Did you guys edit it? Or my guess is you edited it and you thought, oh, C word's a little too much. But go ahead, make fun of the Puerto Ricans, it'll be really funny. Ha ha ha. By the way, maybe his other stuff is good, but that joke about Puerto Rico was the worst joke I've ever heard.
It seems like there's widespread agreement on that, other than Trump supporters who, in my opinion, are so worried that this is gonna hurt Trump electorally that they're pretending like it's not a big deal and they're getting mad at anyone who thinks it's a big deal. But there are Puerto Ricans who support Donald Trump and they were offended by it. They've been giving interviews in the press. And it seems that Trump realizes that this could actually hurt him and this was a bad idea. And so he's distancing himself from Hinchcliffe and saying, I don't even know who this guy is. You know, somebody put him in the lineup.
Yeah, no, I get you don't know who he is. That's not the question. The question is, do you run a campaign where the staffers would look at it and go, oh, calling Puerto Ricans piece of garbage, yeah, so funny, I love that. Our crowd will love that, and put that guy in. The Democrats would never do that. I mean, as I told you, they're like, err on the other side, they're too boring, right? But they're not gonna send people out there to make jokes about like, don't white males suck, the people of Alabama and Mississippi are garbage. They would never do that, never, right? The Republicans do that and they go, oops, oh God, oops, we did it again. Yeah, look, if you're asking which party is more hateful, are you being serious? The party that wanted to, Trump said ban all Muslims, Trump said criminals, rapists, etc. He said every hateful thing. And then every excuse I get from all the conservatives I debate is, well, you shouldn't believe him. He's a clown, he exaggerates, he does hyperbole. You shouldn't believe a word he says. Then why are you voting for him if you don't believe a word he says? I believe him. I believe that he doesn't like those people. That's why he staffed his campaign with tons of people who don't like anyone in any other ethnic group, and that's why this happened. So now, let's talk about Elon Musk for a second. Apparently that guy's a moron. So you ran an ad where you were implying that she's the other C word. How stupid are you? You don't think that might, like, the number one liability that Donald Trump's team has is not even the hateful rhetoric. It's that tons of unlikely voters who are women are going to come out because of abortion and how much they can't stand Donald Trump. So you think it's a good idea to imply that she's this other C word? That's the genius of Elon Musk Group? What's wrong with you idiots? Like if I was a Republican, I'd be 10 times angrier at them. And then, okay, oh no, they mean communists. Really? Like I'd love to ask Elon, really, you think Kamala Harris is a communist? Communists want to take away all private property. Kamala Harris.
She's funded by billionaires.
Yeah, she
like you,
supports
Elon,
billionaires
like
and corporations.
You. Okay, like how do billionaires fund communists?
Come on, please, I'm asking if people have just this much sense and education about politics. Communists don't believe in private property. Corporations are the exact opposite. They are giant private enterprises. That is who almost all establishment politicians serve, including Kamala Harris. She serves corporations. She doesn't take corporations away. She helps them. Like that's a real complaint about Kamala Harris. That is a significant problem of Kamala Harris, that she's too friendly to corporate interests. But you think she's a communist? Nah, only the dumbest people. Or I shouldn't say dumb, they're just ignorant.
Well,
so I guess Elon's a total ignorant idiot.
I don't think he's ignorant. I don't think he's an idiot. I think that what Elon Musk was trying to do with that ad is the same thing that Democrats are trying to do to some extent by labeling Donald Trump a fascist, right? It's meant to inspire fear in the electorate and get people to vote against an individual due to that fear. In the case of Kamala Harris, Elon Musk doesn't like her as a candidate. I believe that 100%. He doesn't believe she's an actual communist. He's fear-mongering about her, but he also realized that the misogynistic attacks did not bode well for the Trump campaign when Kamala Harris replaced Joe Biden. Remember, the first reaction you got from Trump's campaign was all sorts of vile, misogynistic garbage, and that was hurting them in the polls. And so I think Musk realized, oh, maybe this ad actually isn't gonna help us, it's probably gonna hurt us, and that's why he took it down.
He's a child, Trump's a child. I mean, we haven't had a competent person run for president since Barack Obama. And you could disagree with Barack Obama, and I criticize tons of his policies, but at least the guy knew how to run a campaign. You know, Jesus Christ, they're both trying to lose. It's like a race in the wrong direction. They're both trying to score in their own end zone. Where's Tim Walz?
Tim Walz is going around, he's doing small rallies and speaking events, but he's not really campaigning alongside Kamala Harris, and I think that's a mistake.
He should be doing 4 to 5 interviews a day. He was the most popular out of the 4 of them. Why are you burying your most popular guy? It's insanity. Neither side wants to win. It's such a maddening race. And by the way, I'll say one quick caveat here. Of all the things we listed, there are 100 horrible things and dumb things, etc. I don't know why they put the JD Vance thing in the same category. He mocked Harris's laugh and saying it was fraudulent and off-putting. That's not a controversial position. Yeah. I don't know. I mean, I guess it could turn off women voters, but she does have a, like of all the things, her laugh and that she's a little fake, that's kind of true. So that's not anywhere like calling Puerto Ricans garbage or attacking all women and calling them the C word. I just want to be clear and fair.
Okay, I just find at this point this story to be kind of annoying and tedious. And why do I think that? All of the attention has been paid to a comedian who made a bad joke, who the Trump supporters in the audience did not react well to, didn't laugh at his jokes, didn't like his jokes. But while the comedian is getting all the heat, you have Rudy Giuliani, who literally referred to 2-year-old Palestinians as terrorists, thus justifying their slaughter. He's not a comedian. He was being 100% serious. But no one cares about that because Palestinians 100% dehumanized in American society. So it's okay to put out that vile garbage during that speech.
Anna, you're so right. Let me add one quick thing to it. Why is the press not making a big deal out of that one?
They don't care.
Because it's not a comic. It's not a comic. He meant it. Okay? So the reason is not just the press, but the Kamala Harris team is not emphasizing that. They're saying, can you believe what he said about Puerto Ricans? Well, how about what he said about slaughtering Palestinian children? They're like, yeah, that's okay. Our donors are into that too.
Yeah, I mean,
we're financing it, so that's okay. So that's why the press is like, we don't mind that. Smearing Muslims, attacking Palestinians, and calling for their slaughter. That's Tuesday on cable news. That's Tuesday on the Kamala Harris campaign. So that's why nobody makes a big issue out of it.
Well, the press will make a big deal out of what the Harris campaign notes as a big deal.
Exactly.
And the Harris campaign is not going to point to the abhorrent, disgusting comments from Rudy Giuliani as it pertains to Palestinian civilians and literal Palestinian children, because which administration is currently aiding and abetting that slaughter? It's the Biden-Harris administration.
How do you like my garbage truck? This truck is in honor of Kamala and Joe Biden. I think that the comment made by really both of them, because there are really two of them, about being garbage, maybe 250 million people, they shouldn't be talking. That's like deplorable for Hillary. This is the deplorable for Hillary. Joe Biden should be ashamed of himself if he knows what he's even doing. And she should be ashamed because she shouldn't let him do it. She's the vice president, but I assume she's acting as the president. She should never have let that happen. I hope you enjoyed this garbage truck. Thank you very much, everybody.
Oh, we did. We really did. Yes, it is Halloween, and Donald Trump decided one day early to dress up as a sanitation worker in response to President Joe Biden's comments about his supporters, Donald Trump supporters, being garbage, not the people of Puerto Rico. But is this just another method for cleaning up the mess that the Madison Square Garden rally, and specifically the comedian Tony Hinchcliffe, made when he made that joke about Puerto Rico being a floating island of garbage? It's a little bit on the nose there. I have thoughts. I'm sure Cenk has thoughts, but if you remember those comments, they really think that this is it. This is the October surprise, that Joe Biden did the deplorables line and said this about Donald Trump's supporters. Take a listen.
Puerto Rico, where I'm in my home state of Delaware, they're good, decent, honorable people. The only garbage I see floating out there is his supporters. His demonization of seen as unconscionable, and it's un-American.
So right, that is the big line, and so Donald Trump decided to play it up and put on the sanitation worker suit. He looks really more like an air traffic controller. He's also like on a tarmac, weirdly. I don't know. There's also, let's just bring up the photo first. There's this photo, because that was seemingly a good idea when, let's be honest, the orange reflective outfit with the orange of his face and the white little blow up doll mouth, like it's just doesn't work. Like that's an undoctored photo, people. But there it is again. And Donald Trump actually, interestingly, for the first time, his campaign distanced themselves from the comments made by Tony Hinchcliffe, comedian, again, who made that joke about Puerto Rico, which was vetted by the Trump campaign. But still, in his garbage truck, he said, I love Puerto Rico and Puerto Rico loves me, in case there was any doubt. And apparently this stunt went over really well, especially if you're Sean Hannity. Take a look.
As the saying goes, one man's trash is another man's treasure. And today in Wisconsin, take a look at that. This may go down as an iconic, epic moment that we will remember for a long time. Donald Trump hitching a very special ride on a garbage truck, decked out in American flags, MAGA gear. You can tell a lot about the state of a campaign by optics.
I guess. I don't know. I would just put a slogan on the truck like, cleaning up the Democrats' mess or draining the swamp or something. Otherwise, it looks like you really are leaning into being garbage people. And look, obviously, I think we can talk about, Cenk has thoughts, I'm sure, about whether that comment was a smart comment from Joe Biden. I will say this, from a little bit more of a comedic perspective on the comments about Donald Trump supporters being garbage. I don't think they're garbage, but I do think some of them are trash. And they know they're trash. Let's be real. The reason that people like Donald Trump is because he's kind of trash, right? He says the thing you're not supposed to say that allegedly you're all thinking, like Mexicans are rapists, right? And women, oh, she's not a 10, right? Like that you want to just, you grope them, you do whatever you want, as we'll talk about a little bit later. Like that trash part of America, I think, is exactly what appeals Donald Trump to his base. And many of them would agree. They're okay with it. They're like, yeah, I'm gonna just say how I feel. I don't like the trans, but that's my take, Cenk. I know you have a different take, and there's also a poll coming.
Yeah, so was this a good photo op? Is a poll Let's go nuts right now in the live chat. Yeah, I definitely have a little bit of a different take than Francesca, but I would argue that it's nuanced, but it's not wishy-washy. I'm coming out strongly on all sides, so as you'll see here. So number one, look, I don't think it's productive to call anybody garbage and trash. As you know, how mad were we when he called Puerto Rico garbage? Well, that's how mad the other guys are when somebody on our side calls them garbage or trash. So it's counterproductive. I don't love it. So now, and I've got a real reason why the Trump guys are mad, and I understand it. I'll get to that in a second. But first, all the fake reasons. So guys, really, if you're MAGA, you're gonna pretend that you're upset about name calling? Nah, come on, guys, be real. Nobody name calls more than Donald J. Trump. He name calls in every direction, everyone. Is it just, oh no, it's just Democratic leaders? Come on, please don't lie. Please don't be embarrassing. He's called America a garbage can. I mean, look, he constantly says, oh, America's a mess, it's terrible, America's terrible. Well, brother, you were president like 3.5 years ago. So why didn't you fix it completely back then? Anyways, that's the whole country, but you're gonna say, oh no, it's because of the immigrants. Well, okay, then he just called the immigrants garbage. And the immigrants were such garbage, they turned the whole country into garbage. So it's not just this comic, he's the one saying it, okay? And then when you get into Latinos, Jews, blacks, Christians,
Palestinians,
like not only does he insult every group, but then he says, if you don't vote for me when you're Jewish, you ought to have your head examined. And it's probably gonna be your fault. That seems like blaming the voters, doesn't it? Right? And he does that with almost every ethnic group. If you're pretending that you're offended when your MAGA God is the biggest name caller on planet Earth, please either understand that you're super entitled and you think I get to say anything I want about you, but don't you dare say anything about my fragile snowflake ego, because then I'm gonna need a safe space for the rest of the election. No, right. Not buying it. You know what that is? That take is garbage, and you know it. You know you don't believe that. If you do, you're totally detached from reality. Wait, Biden, I thought you said Biden was senile, and I agreed with you guys on that. So now all of a sudden he's not senile and he meant it? Did you see him stumbling around with the words if you watch the whole clip? And he's like, blah, 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 blah. He doesn't know what he's saying. And did he mean the comic or did he mean all of Trump's supporters? My guess is, in his senile mind, he meant the comic. We can disagree about that. You could say, no, I know they hate us, and he meant all of us. Okay, fine, whatever. I don't care about that. But don't pretend that Joe Biden is all of a sudden like has incredible mental acuity, and he meant exactly that, and he meant to insult you guys because he thinks that's a brilliant political strategy. Kamala Harris went out and immediately apologized for it, so apparently not a great political strategy if he meant it, and you know he didn't. Or I don't care if you think he did, but you certainly can't complain if you've been loving the name calling that Trump has been doing this whole time. Now, why are they, one last fake reason, why are they pretending to be so mad? And so maybe some of them are because they're so biased they can't see how much they've attacked left-wing voters and Democratic voters, but I think most of them are pretending. Why? Because they want to be able to say, we're even. We called you 2,000 terrible names. The senile old man slipped up and accidentally said something that we're going to pretend it is about all of us. Oh, we're offended, we're all even, okay? So that's a huge reason why. But the second reason is a little bit legitimate. So look, guys, part of the Trump's appeal is he hates the establishment, and the establishment's full of elites, and the elites look down their noses at you, right? And so when anyone on the Democratic side calls them garbage, it triggers them more, because then they think like, oh, here comes the elites again, looking down at us. I hate those guys, and it drives them to go vote. So that part I think is true. All right, I said a lot there. Franny, what do you think?
Yeah, no, I think that's absolutely right. You have to, I mean, it's unfair, right? We're in these debates, and it's like you have to handle MAGA with kid gloves, as if not just what they're saying, but what they're advocating for. To me, the bigger headline of the Madison Square Garden rally was Stephen Miller saying America for Americans. And we want to, I don't know what that was, but it sounded spooky. And we want to like deport tens of 11 million undocumented people. Like, who's calling for mass deportation? Who is calling for an entire policy towards pro-Palestine demonstrators that basically locks them up and criminalizes their speech, right? Has an entire plan. It's called Project Esther. Look it up. It's a whole plan for criminalizing pro-Palestine people and calling them the enemy from within. Who's using, let's be real, fascistic and Nazi language? Like, this is the same thing when racists are like, the real racism is when you called me racist. No, that's literally not how anything works. That's like fart logic. Whoever smelt it, dealt it. That's not how farts work, people. Whoever smelt it didn't deal it. But do you understand what I'm saying? It's just so funny to me that they're trying to equate this. But Cenk, you're right. We always have to be the bigger ones and have to say, wow, what a good stunt. You really handed it to us.
Yeah, no, look, again, the policy and politics are different, right? What was a good political maneuver versus what do they actually believe, what's actually going to be the policy. So I don't think that Trump's going to give us any good policies. But in this photo op, yeah, I get it. They're doing the fake outrage, and some of them are actually outrages, I just explained. But this is probably a good photo op for him. That's my take on it. Because he's flipping the frame and he's making it seem like the Democrats are the most guilty of accusing the other side of garbage, and it's taking the power away from what the comic said on in Madison Square Garden. He did this with fake news. Originally his team did fake news all over Facebook in 2016. They literally put out fake articles. That's where the term comes from. But then he jujitsu'd it and said the mainstream media is fake news. Now nobody remembers that he's the one that started fake news. They think his opponents did fake news. So when you have a giant garbage truck with Trump on it and him doing this whole shtick, I think people are, going to think, oh, right, the Democrats called the Republicans garbage. So I think it's, whether it drives us crazy or not, I think it is a good photo op. That's my take on that. And yeah, in terms of the photo op, just the photo op, what's your take on the politics of that?
I don't think it overcomes the comments that were made on Madison Square Garden. I don't think that, again, it's on the nose for trying to be a cleanup crew. He's literally physically trying to clean up the mess from the Madison Square Garden rally. It's just a few degrees removed. Not everyone heard Biden's comments. Not everyone who heard Biden's comments, even as you said, thought he was even being cogent or serious or didn't even remember what he was saying. So again, it's like, nice try, A for effort. It's not like, it doesn't make like Mark Anthony and Jennifer Lopez and all of the massive Puerto Rican celebrities just sort of come to your defense. Nah, man, you're not getting, Hulk Hogan only has one shirt to rip off. Although, no, he's got a couple, but you know what I'm saying.
I do,
There is more gaff though. We can move on.
Yeah, no, it's just two things here. I want to see how the poll ended, but also, I don't think that it makes people forget about that. And I think that Puerto Ricans are genuinely super pissed. I got to put my glasses on, but 68-32 saying no, it's not a good photo op. So the only show in America where I'm like, all right, look at that. The audience disagrees with me. Way to have an open mind, okay? So, and we'll put that up on our YouTube community, tyt.com. Member votes count 100 times more. Members, go out there and support me. Okay, no, I'm just playing. It's perfectly good opinion to have on that. And I like that he also had kind of almost a Halloween outfit the day before Halloween. By the way, the noise that you heard was me just trying to help with the Halloween feel of the story. No, I accidentally opened up something. Anyways, bottom line is it's not gonna. So it's not gonna. I opened up Twitter for a second and it started.
Okay. I was like, what was that, like a new drink? That sounds really intense.
No, it was a video. And so, but bottom line is, no, the Puerto Rican American voters are not going to, well, they're all Americans, are not going to forget that. Our side's not going to forget the things that he said. But now we're in the get out the vote part of the campaign. So I think this will drive a lot of his voters to get even angrier and go, there they are again, looking down at us. I'm definitely going to go vote for Trump. So in that sense, I think it helps him politically.
I think that's a good point. But Cenk, I mean, can you imagine in the final week of your election, the big question that the mainstream, that everyone's asking is, did you just have a Nazi rally or not? You can't imagine that's a good place to be for a campaign.
And my people told me about 4 weeks ago, I was saying, no, I want to protect the people. I want to protect the women of our country. I want to protect the women. Sir, please don't say that. Why? They said, we think it's very inappropriate for you to say. I said, why? I'm president. I want to protect the women of our country. They said. They said, sir, I just think it's inappropriate for you to say, I pay these guys a lot of money. Can you believe it? I said, well, I'm going to do it whether the women like it or not. I'm going to protect them. I'm going to protect them from migrants coming in.
Okay, there was Donald Trump continuing to not practice the art of consent, especially when it comes to women. He is admitting there that he was told by his advisors, who he pays a lot, and then sort of scoffed at the idea that he would pay them and that they would tell him something he didn't want to hear, which is, when you continue to say, I will protect women and they will be happy if I am reelected, it sounds kind of creepy. And instead, he doubles down on it, shares the information that they didn't want him to say it, and then adds to it and makes it even creepier by saying, I will protect the women whether they like it or not. Now, for those of you who don't remember what he's been saying, let's go back to what he's been saying, again, without that sprinkle little non-consensual piece on top.
And I will protect women at a level never seen before. They will finally be healthy, hopeful, safe, and secure. Their lives will be happy, beautiful, and great again. And it's my honor to do so.
Super non-threatening. Doesn't sound like a plan for mass lobotomies at all. So that already was creepy, but now he says whether they like it or not. I can give my thoughts. I did want to give the presidential candidate, Vice President Kamala Harris, a moment to reply because she did take a moment specifically to call out what he just said. And I thought it's pretty well done. Take a look.
The former president, Donald Trump's remark about women and whether they like it or not. And listen, it actually is, I think, very offensive to women in terms of not understanding their agency, their authority, their right, and their ability to make decisions about their own lives, including their own bodies. And this is just the latest on a series of reveals by the former president of how he thinks about women and their agency.
See, now, I think for a candidate who doesn't often talk about specifically her gender, that was pretty powerful because it's true. He does not view women as people with agency or the ability or care about the ability to consent. In fact, just yesterday, another story of a groping encounter with Donald Trump broke, this time with a beauty queen who he invited specifically to his pageant. This is according to the Daily Mail. We can throw this up. Claims Donald Trump groped her after luring her back to his suite at New York's Plaza Hotel. She was a Swiss banker and she was also a part-time model. Her name was Beatrice Kuehl, and she was going to the Donald J. Trump American Dream pageant at Plaza Hotel because somehow, yes, they let Donald Trump run beauty pageants. He, according to the Daily Mail, she now lives in the Swiss capital of Bern, and said that after a press luncheon, a Trump staffer approached her to say the celebrity hotelier wanted a private meeting. He took me up to the upper floors. It was one of those big suites, she said. When I entered, he jumped on me. I had just time to turn. I was not prepared. I tried to do what I could to get rid of him. Kuehl says Trump attacked her at the New York Plaza Hotel, which he owned at the time. She said Trump groped her as she told him to stop and tried to shove him off. He kissed me on the lips and on the neck. He tried to lift my dress. He was grabbing and touching my body everywhere he could. She goes on, obviously this is a week after we now know that he also groped a Sports Illustrated model named Stacey Williams, who is then a girlfriend of Jeffrey Epstein. So, Cenk, I'm going to protect you whether you like it or not. I mean, is that what he was doing when he was doing all the groping? I'm just protecting you from all of the other gropers. Yeah, like he seemed, we've all known that guy who's like, just want to make sure no one's bothering you. That's why I'm going to breathe down your neck like a creep.
Yeah. Well, look, especially when you're the candidate who said, I grabbed them by the crotch, even if they don't want to. I kiss them, even if they don't want it. When you're a celebrity, you get away with it. When you tell women you're going to do something, whether they want it or not, it comes across a little differently from you. It already comes across terribly, if you ask me, from anyone, but especially from Donald Trump. So if this is your big pitch to women, you know what, I'm gonna do things to you whether you like it or not a great pitch. I think both sides are trying super hard to lose this election. So, and this is Trump doing, if you don't have enough common sense, especially after the Hollywood Access tape, especially after your history of groping women, by the way, dozens of women, which I'll get into in a second, and you have an adjudicated case that just happened where you were found liable for sexual abuse because you grabbed a woman without permission, I wouldn't go around telling women that you're gonna do things to them without their consent, even if it's what you think is protecting them, right? So yeah. We get it, guys, for the MAGA guys. No, he said that he's gonna protect them without their consent. No, don't do anything without their consent. And anytime that Trump has done something to women without their consent in the past, it's been to grope them and to sexually abuse them. Look, you can't talk to MAGA guys about that are in La La Land and think, no, Donald Trump's an angel and he's never touched a woman without consent. Okay, I mean, then I can't help you because you don't live on this planet. Okay, but for the rest of us, how many times does he have to do this? Like, look, guys, I know that they bring these stories out right before the election on purpose. That's called oppo research. They plan the news, etc. Does that mean that in this case it's false? No, these stories have been around for a long, long time. And I would talk about them when no one was talking about them. I bring it up every once in a while because it goes to the character of the guy. The story that I often tell is reporters interviewing Donald Trump and Melania when she's pregnant with Barron. Melania goes upstairs at some point in the interview, and Trump starts to take the reporter on a tour of, I believe it was Mar-a-Lago. And they get into a room and he puts her against the wall and starts groping her. Because that's what he always does. So
his move.
I mean, look, again, MAGA guys will be triggered by this. But given that history and given the fact that he said he's so proud that he took away Roe v. Wade and fundamental human rights for women, I can't imagine that anyone's even close to him as the most anti-woman presidential candidate in history. Like, I don't mean in history because in the old days there was lots of sexist misogyny, very, very bad. I mean in our lifetime, right?
Yeah.
So I mean, are we really pretending that there's any chance he's better for women in this country? Come on.
Well, what's interesting about that clip, Cenk, and I don't know if we have time to watch it again, but it was just interesting because when he says, no, I'm gonna protect women, they're mad at me because I said I'm gonna protect women. Big applause. Huge applause, because I've spoken to Republican women, you know, I pour one out for them and their beliefs and how their party perennially hates them. But you know, a lot of them are like, you know what? We just need a big, strong man, which is truly sort of the hallmark of, you know, a desire for authoritarianism and fascism. The political system is, you know, corrupt. It's not working for me. I just want a dictator and be done with it. But a lot of women have said that to my face. I just want a big, strong man. He got huge applause. But then he added, and I will protect them whether they like it or not. You ruined it. Because it was creepy before, but now we know you're gonna, it did sound forced before. Now we know it's definitely forced. What does that even look like? You won't be able to see a doctor when you're miscarrying, as a woman in the state of Texas who recently died from an infection from a miscarriage. Like, you won't be able to get any kind of contraception. You won't be able to talk to your husband without him ratting you out. You won't be able to seek legal, like, what is it that you will make, that you will make a woman's world so insular and so perfect? Like, do you not understand what I'm saying? Like, it feels much more like a threat.
Yeah, I hear you. Look, there's, again, I'm gonna disagree on one thing. Look, I think a lot of women like the idea of somebody looking out for them and protecting them. It doesn't have to be a man. It doesn't have to be, you know, political, etc. I think it's a normal instinct for that almost all people have, men and women. So if, and you're right that he got a big applause line for that, and if he'd left it there, it would have actually been pretty good. I don't agree with you that that's like some sort of like leaning towards authoritarian or fascism. You could be a woman who wants to be protected by your husband or et cetera and not be authoritarian or want authoritarianism. But do they go too far? They clearly go too far, the leaders here. It's like Tucker Carlson did the speech the other day, we showed it to you guys, where he's like told about like, oh, your kids aren't acting right and they're, you gotta teach them better, et cetera. And they gotta know there's gonna be consequences and dad's coming home. And it got a big applause line. If he left it there, that's classic conservative way of thinking, no problem. And then just like Trump, he has to take a weird turn. He takes a weird turn. She's been a naughty little girl, and you got to spank her. I'm like, what are you doing? Why did you take that turn? Same exact thing here in Trump. Like, I'm not going to begrudge him going with classic conservative thinking. I'm here to protect women. But then when you take the turn and go, whether they like it or not, okay, well, then you took a creepy turn. That's my take on it.
You made it weird.
Yeah, you made it weird. I'll give the last word to one of our members. Dragon with a Girl Tattoo wrote in, tyt.com/2024 to become a member or hit the join button below. They wrote in, women don't need protection from Trump. Women need protection from Trump.
Yep.
And that's probably the best point. If you enjoyed this video, that's because of our members. They make us independent, they make us strong, and they make us honest. Become a member today by hitting the join button below.